There we go. Welcome all to this meeting of the Planning Committee. We'll start with public comment on items not on the agenda. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on any items that are not on the agenda? If so, please so indicate. I don't have any speaker slips. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to approval of minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, motion by Romick, seconded by Hudson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions or any objections? Motion carries unanimously. Got that out of order. Okay, that carried unanimously. So we'll move on to the consent calendar.
Move approval.
Second.
Johnny's quick.
Okay, Romick made the motion, Hudson made the second. Any comments, questions, anything from the audience? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any objections, any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We are working our way there. Okay, now we're up at item number 5, which is on the regular agenda, which is to authorize CCTA Executive Director to sign multi-party funding agreement to conduct the West Contra Costa, it should say, High Capacity Transit Study. Is there a staff report?
Yeah, real brief one. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Sorry for the typo, West Contra Costa High Capacity Transit Study. This we're asking the authority to authorize the executive director to sign the multi-party funding agreement. This is an agreement with WCTAC, BART, MTC, and CCTA, who are all the parties that agreed to contribute funds towards the West County High Capacity Transit Study. This will formalize our commitment of $300,000. Invoices will be paid proportionately by those same percentages of contributions. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to.
You're asking us to forward this to the full board?
That's correct.
Okay. I'll move we forward it to the full board as staff recommendation.
Okay, that's a motion. Is there a second? Okay, so this is the 2 days, as I think of you. Hudson, and also, forgetting your name, Durant, thank you. I was going to write it down here.
I forget my name sometimes.
Okay. I always forget names. I have 5 kids. So all in favor? Let me ask, is there anything from the audience? Seeing nothing? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously, which brings us to item number 6, which is a status update on the 2014 Countywide Comprehensive Transportation Plan. Is there a staff report?
Yes, Madam Chair. Just a very brief update on where we are. We had originally planned to adopt the 2014 Countywide Comprehensive Transportation Plan, or CTP, last March 18th, 2015. And we have decided, in consultation with the CTP Ad Hoc Committee, to postpone the adoption of that plan while we take some time to respond to additional comments that have been received. And we're going to report to the authority on status of the transportation expenditure plan in April. I think what we'll be able to do, based upon the discussions with some of the commenters we've been engaged with, we'll be able to come back to you with a revised work plan for the countywide transportation plan in May, and that could involve more work on the CTP and more work on the environmental document. So at this point, we're in a bit of a holding pattern, but we will probably get this process moving again in May. So you'll see this item again next month.
Are there any comments from the board?
Just a
Yes.
question, Madam Chair. And this may be that we should take this up under item 7, but does this mean that there's likely to be slippage in the milestone schedule for the CTP?
yes, Commissioner Durant, there will be some slippage.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments? Okay, are there any comments from the audience? Oh, did I miss your hand? No. Oh, no, okay. Dave? Wee bit of slippage, okay. Are there any comments from the audience? Okay, the proposed action is to receive the staff's status report. We received it. Okay, I think it's right in our packet. Thank you very much, and an oral presentation as well. Thank you. So with that, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a presentation of the I-680 Corridor System Management Plan, or the, I am sorry, the CTP is not on the, 7 is CMA, the CMA, the CMA budget, maybe? Close enough. Okay. Okay. So we have item number 7 next, which is the circulation of the draft fiscal year 15-16 Congestion Management Agency budget. Is
Yes,
there a
Madam
staff
Chair,
report?
Martin Engelman, Deputy Executive Director for Planning at CCTA, and I will present the budget to you. Every year, we put together a budget that addresses our role as the Congestion Management Agency for Contra Costa County. And the budget covers essentially everything we do in terms of planning and growth management related to both Measure J, the Measure J Growth Management Program, and a lot of planning work that we do that is related to MTC's programs and also their effort to implement now a sustainable community strategy. So if you'd like to read about all the things that we do in planning, there is what's called a CMA program description, which is attachment B in your packet, and as part of the effort to do a zero-based budget, we actually write out all of the tasks and all the responsibilities that we have as a congestion management agency in attachment B. And it's split into 3 parts. There's the Transportation Planning and Growth Management Program, which is driven by Measure J. That's what the voters approved. And that includes preparation of a countywide plan, doing the action plans of routes of regional significance, and overseeing our growth management program that allocates local streets and roads funds to local jurisdictions. And then there is the congestion management program. State legislation requires that as the designated congestion management agency for Contra Costa, we prepare every 2 years a congestion management program that we go out and monitor the freeways, the state highways, and the principal arterials, that we prepare a draft and final CMP. Under the CMA section, we also have implementation of MTC delegated planning and programming functions. So MTC has been passing a lot of money through to us, federal money, surface transportation planning funds, and CMAQ funds, congestion mitigation and air quality funds. Those funds really reimburse us 88% for all the efforts that we have in terms of fulfilling the federal requirements. Now, we used to have a section called T+, Transportation Planning, Land Use Solutions. And this year, since T+ is kind of an old program and it's gone away, it's been replaced now with a Sustainable Community Strategy. But T+ and that whole focus effort, if you'll recall that, led up to the Sustainable Community Strategy, which is now adopted by MTC. So we have a new section in the program description called Sustainable Community Strategy, SCS implementation. And that involves taking that SCS and seeing that the housing is implemented, housing programs are implemented such that we are putting 70% of our housing into priority development areas. And it also includes preparation of a PDA growth and investment strategy, which we have to update at this point every year. And then there are a number of planning activities that go along with that. So the three main programs, Growth Management Program, Congestion Management Program, and now SCS implementation, are outlined in the program description. To staff this whole thing involves 6.61 FTEs, and that's lower than last year's. Last year it was 8.5 full-time equivalents. The primary reason for this change is that our state planning and programming and monitoring funds, called PPM funds, are being reduced. So we're now moving some of the engineering staff hours over from planning over to projects, and so our total FTEs has gone down a little bit. The staffing plan drives the salaries and benefits budgets, and that's again divided between growth management, congestion management, and SCS implementation. Total staffing costs are about $1.5 million, and that's $500,000 lower than last year's due to the shift in PPM. So then we have the line item budget, and I can address those in descending order, kind of the big ones. $1.5 million for priority development area planning grants, which we received from MTC. Keeping work going on the 2014 CTP and the Transportation Expenditure Plan outreach effort, which is we're receiving consulting services from Graybo and Scott on that for $1.2 million. And the next biggest line item is actually a project that Peter is going to oversee, the I-80 value pricing pilot in West County. There's in decreasing order now, $250,000 to update the bicycle plan, and similar amount to continue work on the CTP and the supplemental environmental impact report. And I'll stop at the $200,000 level for the I-680 congestion relief transit options study. There are a number of smaller items in the $100,000 range and below for continued monitoring of the system and ongoing updates of our modeling and our land use, and those are all in the line item budget. So the total budget is $6.8 million. That's higher than last year's, primarily due to federal pass-through projects, addition of federal programs. The lion's share of it is funded by STP and CMAQ. So $3.4 million of that is funded through those federal funds, $440,000 through PPM funds, and there's a local share that remains, which is the matching cost for all these federal funds. And we ask, we have a joint powers agreement with all 20 of our local jurisdictions, and they've agreed in that joint powers agreement to help pay for the local matching share of this $6.8 million budget. So the local match calculation this year is $209,000. And under this JPA agreement we bring this budget to the city public managers. We plan to do that in early April. We get their agreement on the overall budget picture, and we get their agreement on the $209,000 contribution. And based upon that, we can then proceed. And if the budget goes down, then we don't have an issue with the local match. If it goes up, we have to go back to the public managers and get their approval before we raise the amount. On page 726, you can see how that $209,000 is broken up among the 20 jurisdictions, and we'll invoice local jurisdictions for that amount based upon actual costs, actual expenses. And most years, the actual expenses are much lower than what we've anticipated due to some of the lags in expenditures. So that would be the maximum amount we invoice. So we're asking you tonight to approve circulation of this draft budget and forwarding it to the Public Managers Association for their review in April. And this budget, I should just wrap up by saying this CMA budget will be one component then of the authority's overall budget, which you will see in May and approve in June.
While we're on this hot topic, if I can, page 719, it always worries me when you have one section, 3 lines, and no little bullets or A, B, or one. What are we planning to do? We're going to go tell people to start doing paid parking, or what is 3.3? Revisiting, who's the lucky one?
Start making us pay for it.
I think I can answer that.
And to be more correct, Brett, I think we're stuck with having to do this. It's part of One Bay Area. It's one of the bullets. We're probably going to be doing even more of it. But I mean, what do you envision? Should I let my city manager know that with $3 a parking stall is on its way, or?
I don't think you need to go that far. This is an activity that MTC took over or took on a couple of years ago. They're continuing to do it mostly through technical assistance to local jurisdictions. You know, here they've provided some consultant support to different jurisdictions. El Cerrito, for example, did some work on parking policies or parking needs within their city, and they're hoping that by providing this technical assistance, the jurisdictions will identify new ways to address the parking issues. It could be through paid parking. It could be through variable parking charges at different times of the day. And one of the things that we're supposed to do is to help provide that link between MTC's work and local jurisdictions.
Is there a time? Go ahead.
I was going to say, in reference to what I think you may be referring to, and that's maybe a question I don't know if you know the answer, but I'll ask, we were trying to figure out, I believe, about how many parking places per unit we should have around the BART station for housing.
Yeah.
Is it that?
Yeah, for El Cerrito, that's what it was. MTC provided support for some work that Menlo Park did on how businesses in the downtown could address parking issues. I think they went with a kind of Donald Shoup approach where they did variable parking charges in the downtown.
Yeah. I think this is. I think there's several things that come. I think you're going to have to show at least that you studied it. I know, for example, when we did our city center, we had friends show up to remind us the virtues of paid parking and getting people out of cars. And it actually is part of the agreement that you'll study it, but it doesn't make a lot of sense if you're the only one, the only business park or the only retail center doing it, and all the others around you don't do it. So we put it off for a while. I was going to ask the question, is this also something required in SB 1339, or is there any tie to it, or was this just something MTC wants to show that they're paying attention?
I don't think there's a particular tie to any legislation. It's something, as you mentioned, something that MTC is interested in. It's part of their Plan Bay Area and the previous plan as well. That the interest in parking and the management of parking as a way to achieve the regional goals. You know, some large amount of the congestion in downtown areas comes from cars driving around looking for parking places, and that additional traffic causes additional pollution, and that's the link to the transportation plan. And
Okay, any other comments from the board?
Change the words, Dave.
Okay, are there any, did I hear another comment?
No.
Okay.
No, I will say this, on 3.3, what I take from all of that is essentially it's there's not going to be a sort of a proscriptive notion about what it means to have, parking that supports a PDA, and that it's just making our staff here available to work with local jurisdictions. That seems reasonable.
Yes, that's right.
So you want an approval of the circulation?
You can make a motion if you like.
Staff recommendation.
Okay.
No, I also.
Oh, okay. So that would be Hudson and Romick. And are there any comments from the audience? Okay, seeing none. Is there, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any objection? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. With that, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, item number 8 that I was trying to do before. And that's a presentation of the I-680 Corridor System Management Plan, or the CSMP Operations Analysis Results.
That is the item. I understand your. Yes.
On a Sunday.
Photoshop daylight.
It's 3 a.m. So yes, thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. We are here to present the operations analysis results of the Interstate 680 Corridor System Management Plan. I'm here with Eric Alm. He was the project manager for this effort from Caltrans District 4, which he's since left to go up to Sacramento headquarters, but he's still overseeing this effort until it's all wrapped up, and that includes presenting to all the local committees, technical committees, and you. So this is our 4th corridor system management plan within the county. We did one for I-80 for the ICM project. We did one on Highway 24, and we did one on Highway 4. But this, as Eric will explain to you, is a new generation of CSMPs, a more multimodal look at the corridor, and we were selected to be part of this pilot project, and Eric will explain all the new components to the CSMP. So I'm going to hand it off to Eric to get things started.
Okay, thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you about this. I'm going to summarize our work with the 680 CSMP, which we started in 2012 with a federal state planning and research grant. As Matt mentioned, this is a second generation CSMP. Our first generation of CSMPs were required as part of Prop 1B funding towards certain congested urban freeway corridors. The 680 corridor was not one of the corridors that received Prop 1B congestion management improvement account funds. So when we embarked upon this next generation CSMP, we wanted to select one of the key congested urban freeway corridors that had not received CMIA funding. So we are very appreciative that CCTA was willing to be involved in this. Caltrans is the lead on this 680 study. CCTA and the participating jurisdictions and agencies have been great partners throughout this process. We've already presented these results to our Studies Technical Advisory Committee, the TCC, as well as the TransPAC and the SWAT boards. And we would like to take this to the full authority board in 2 weeks. While this is an information item for the committee today, we're looking for CCTA acceptance of the report as one of the many ways to help inform the regional transportation planning process. Slide there. Okay. So a corridor system management plan describes how a corridor is performing, why it's performing that way, and what mix of strategies will address its problems. And to do this, it provides high-level data on the corridor. It evaluates the effectiveness of strategies, and in working with our partners, gets a level of consensus on a corridor vision or concept. So its greatest value is to inform decision-making and to highlight improvement opportunities. Our CSMPs now need to be developed in the context of sustainable community strategies. They need to think complete streets. They need better, faster evaluation tools. So this CSMP brought in 3 new elements that were not part of the original CSMPs that were completed in 2010. So first, we used performance measures from Caltrans's Smart Mobility Framework as part of a corridor-level analysis. This allowed us to report on benefits that were linked to goals beyond simply delay reduction. We also conducted a complete streets assessment that identified bike and ped access issues and opportunities. And we also used an experimental new operations analysis tool that was developed by UC Berkeley called TOPL, which analyzed the effects of ramp metering and other operational strategies related to freeway performance. I can get that. So this is how the effort was organized. We hired Systemetrics Group as our prime contractor. We had a core staff working group that met monthly and a broader technical advisory committee that met for major milestones. We also collaborated very closely with UC Berkeley and our Caltrans headquarters operations on the TOPL operations model. The staff working group consisted of Caltrans, CCTA, MTC, and UC Berkeley staff. And our technical advisory committee included those same members, as well as staff representatives from all the corridor jurisdictions, major transit agencies, and a few representatives from corridor jurisdictions bike ped committees. Also, the Alameda CTC and Solano Transportation Authority were represented on the TAC as well. So some of our TAC members' priorities in this work included confirming existing bottlenecks, understanding the impacts of improvements on arterial diversion, and potential local ramp metering impacts. We utilized a range of non-traditional performance measures, and that included travel time reliability, greenhouse gas emissions, and mode share, among others. The first diagram shows that the single occupant vehicles will remain the dominant travel mode. The second simply shows that travel time is at its most unreliable or unpredictable in the PM peak. And with the help of Nelson Nygaard as one of our subcontractors, we examined the multimodal connectivity of arterials and multi-use paths that are parallel to and crossing the 680 corridor. And we did this by starting with a minimum standard definition that we developed of a complete streets corridor as it relates to the freeway, having frequent accessible crossings of the freeway, having parallel contiguous alternative routes and paths on either side of the freeway, and having limited obstructions to safe and convenient passage of pedestrians and cyclists at freeway ramps and transit centers. And from this, we identified those connections along the corridor, noted general issues, and recommended high-level improvement opportunities. And using the existing detection network and field visits, we analyzed the existing bottlenecks in the corridor and their causes. This was particularly important as our TOPL operations model had to be calibrated in a manner that reasonably reflected the bottlenecks that we identified. Otherwise, we simply couldn't believe the forecast results that we were getting out of that analysis model. The TAC members and the staff working group, all agreed that the TOPL model reflected the current conditions or conditions as of 2013 when this analysis was conducted. And that included our Caltrans operations staff, MTC's operations staff, and Matt. And we also worked with the TAC to develop 5 improvement scenarios that we evaluated. And unlike traditional corridor studies, these 5 scenarios built on each other. What I mean by that is after running one scenario, we added the next scenario on top of the previous results to observe the change, the changes that from one scenario, building on one scenario to the next. And what this allowed us to do was evaluate, the stakeholders' collective vision of the corridor operation strategy. First scenario combined near-term, fully funded mobility projects that included arterial widenings, certain fully funded arterial widenings, the Ox Lane project that was recently delivered, and the initial Express Lane project north to Livorno. The second scenario, we tested ramp metering on its own so we could isolate the impacts. And then we combined other relatively near-term strategies that are in current plans. And that included the initial 684 interchange improvement and also the planned direct access ramps in the San Ramon area. And additional express lanes that are also planned. In the third scenario, we combined planned projects to be delivered later, which included some additional arterial improvements and the remainder of the 684 interchange. Scenario 4, we looked at a range of auxiliary lane projects that were considered in the year 2003 680 corridor study. And scenario 5 was a bit unique. We wanted a relatively simple way to estimate what the corridor impact would be of a substantial investment in bike ped facilities. Our very rough method of doing this was to reduce the vehicle miles traveled input to the travel demand model by 1.5%. This being as a stand-in for build out of the bike ped network. We got this estimate from the 2009 CCTA bike ped plan, but we could use this method as a stand-in for any travel demand reduction strategy, really. We based the cost of this scenario on the estimate of build out from the bike ped plan, and you'll see that in a minute reflected in the benefit cost ratio results. And lastly, we also evaluated the impact of improved emergency response to incidents by simulating an incident in the TOPL model. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Matt. He's going to walk you through how we
Gil, I
did
think there's a
the analysis.
question.
Yeah,
Sure.
if I can, while you're on, Eric, this definitely caught my attention. As luck would have it, we have a bit of an expert on backups on 680. And when I look at page 817, and it says the backup on the right side, and it's talking about the very top orange, I guess is what it is, northbound on Mergen usually resolves just south of Greenbrook Avenue. When you're through, I'm going to ask for comments about that because I'm not as expertise as him, but I find that once you get into Danville, it just stops everywhere.
Do you want to
Can you repeat
do
the,
that now?
It's the top line, 817, the top line, and you look all the way to the right, it says generally resolves itself just south of Greenbrook Avenue, which is the overpass. There's no on-ramp, off-ramp, and it was part of the Ox Lane, which has helped quite a bit, but Danville's just a parking lot. I mean, the whole problem getting here is Danville for the most part. It's not actually merging onto the 680-24 section.
And the bottleneck, assessment here was initially done ahead of the Ox Lane delivery.
Okay. Well, it's Now, what I'm saying is not that it resolves itself at Greenville. It doesn't resolve itself till you clear Danville. I mean, it's a pain in the neck, but that's okay. I couldn't resist that when I saw it because when he was chair, never mind.
And I'll also add that this assessment was done in 2013. This took some time to deliver, so we're definitely seeing some increase in.
You're lucky as
Yes,
chair now.
The majority of groups we presented this to have noted what happened this past September, where traffic just kind of went through the roof. So we couldn't really anticipate that.
I'm not. What you're finding is absolutely what everybody else is finding. When you got a lot of on ramps and off ramps, and you don't have a HOV on ramp off ramp, you're going to stop. And we stopped many times.
Yep, we see a number of areas with weaving issues and high demand issues and high on ramp volumes, and that's clear from our assessment. Yes. So I do want to hand it over to Matt, who's going to walk you through the analysis results.
So this is a little more the technical portion of this, and we decided to give you kind of a high-level presentation. We got a little more technical at the RTPCs and the TCC, but I'll kind of walk you through this. So to evaluate the scenarios that Eric presented earlier, we used both the CCTA's countywide travel demand model. It can show the impact of large projects, widenings, capacity increases for the more operational types of improvements, the ramp meters, the auxiliary lanes. For that, we had to use the TOPL tool, but it uses inputs from our countywide travel demand model. So the model tells it how many people are trying to get from Concord to San Ramon, and then it takes that and gives you more fine-grained, detailed results. So let's go to the next slide. So we to the RTPCs, we presented lots of maps showing these speed contour maps that showed you all the bottlenecks and how things slowed down and moved downstream and were reduced by the different scenarios. But here I'm just going to kind of describe things to you. So basically what you're looking at here is the overall scenario results, and the three columns on the right show the benefits or disbenefits in terms of vehicle delay or congestion in that first column, reliability, and Eric described reliability earlier. It's basically how much time or how much variation in time is it going to take to drive from Pleasanton to the CCTA offices? Is it going to take me 30 minutes every day, or is it going to be an hour and a half one day and 40 minutes the next day? And then the other is emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. That's at 3 a.m., right? Yes, exactly. So the top line shows, the top two lines show the base case scenarios, the no project alternative. Basically, if we didn't construct any of these projects and we just allowed growth in population and jobs to continue, you'd see an increase in delay, you'd see an increase in the unreliability of the corridor, and an increase in the emissions. When we look at scenario one, those are the projects we've already invested in. We do see a decrease in delay, no real change in reliability. We should note that the model doesn't give us real great results on reliability, but one can kind of conclude from a reduction in delay, you're going to see an improvement in reliability, and also a reduction in the emissions there. Scenario two, which includes the ramp metering and the other operational strategies, the express lanes and the direct access ramps in San Ramon, we see a further decrease in delay in the corridor and further decrease in emissions. So those were the big two that provided congestion relief through year 2025. Once we get out there, or for longer term, we start introducing projects like additional improvements on Contra Costa Boulevard and Pacheco Boulevard, and then the remaining improvements to the SR4 680 interchange. We don't see a whole lot of mobility benefits there. That's because those are kind of isolated in the north part of the corridor, and there are benefits to SR4 that we see from the interchange improvements. Scenario 4 is construction of those auxiliary lanes south of 24, basically filling in auxiliary lanes where there are none today. And once again, you see a further reduction in delay and emissions. And then jumping down to the scenario 5, which is the TDM or the bike ped build out, reduction in VMT. Basically, we just see a reduction in emissions there, basically because people are doing something other than driving their car. So I'm going to jump to the next slide.
Matt, before you leave that, if
Yeah.
you can. Little concerned on that right-hand number,
Right.
BC ratio. Am I
Oh,
reading
you're on
that right?
BC already.
Oh, you don't have it on yours.
Oh, yeah, we have a separate slide for BC that I'm going to get to in just
Oh,
a
okay.
minute.
I'll wait.
So,
On ours, it's on this.
yeah, you're right. We did switch it around since in there, it's on there? Okay. Oh, sorry, that's from the executive summary. You're right. I will get to that in just a moment, though. So here's kind of a visual look at what these improvements do to the corridor. Anywhere where you see a green, that's where you're seeing reductions in delay. And most of those green areas are on the arterials. So what we're finding is when you make these improvements, people are basically getting to the freeway as directly as possible because the freeway flow is improved. They're not snaking through neighborhoods or using parallel arterials to avoid the freeway. So there's a couple little spots where you see red, and those are basically the ramps where more folks are jumping on those ramps. And delay at ramps, as long as there's capacity for those folks on the ramps, we see that as fine, as long as it's not affecting the arterials and the freeway is moving. So, and then all the yellow areas, I think, is kind of a net, not much of a change.
Right.
So, which is good over the next, through 2030. So I think it's kind of doing the right things, especially for the jurisdictions that have to deal with all of that diverted traffic on the arterials. So our next slide is the
Here we go.
benefit costs. So, and benefit costs, I'll just explain that the inputs into the benefit cost analysis, which is Caltrans, CalBC model, the inputs are mobility, reliability, and emissions, the ones we saw on the last slide. And then benefits are estimated in terms of travel time, vehicle operating costs, and emissions. So when you look at our first scenario, which is the auxiliary lanes that have already opened and are fully funded projects, you can see a really high benefit costs ratio of 8.6, which anything over 1 is considered to be good. So 8.6 is really good. You look at 90 million spent, 779 million in return. So I think this shows we've made the right decisions up until this point. The next scenario has express lanes, the direct access ramp, and the big project is the phase 3 of the 684 interchange improvement. The reason you're not seeing a huge benefit there, you're still at 1.0, which is good, But the reason you're not seeing a huge benefit is because the benefit from that phase 3 of the interchange, all the benefit is felt on Highway 4. So if we were to look at county or go, 5 or 10 miles on either way on Highway 4, you'd see a much higher benefit cost ratio there, we believe. So it's still good. The next one, it's a huge price tag for the remaining components of the SR4 680 interchange, and you're just not going to see the benefit on 680 on those ones. Probably, again, you're going to see more of the benefit on Highway 4. Scenario 4, here's where you really get some more benefit for not a whole lot of cost. Now, this cost is old, so we would expect that cost to come up and maybe the overall BC to come down, but it's still a very high BC ratio. And so these auxiliary lanes are something we should probably look at a little bit more. They haven't been looked at since that plan from 10 or 12 years ago. And then scenario 5, once again, the VMT reductions due to bike ped improvements. Modest cost there, and that improves the 3 bike ped overcrossings at the Iron Horse Trail over Sycamore Valley, Crow Canyon, and Bollinger Canyon. So that's where a lot of the price tag comes from there. When we did look at ramp metering, we saw the benefit of the ramp metering, but what we had to take into account there was that some of the ramps today probably wouldn't be able to handle the storage that would be needed for ramp metering. So these ramps have been identified through this study, but we would expect Caltrans and MTC to look at these in more depth during an actual ramp metering study that will be done prior to any ramp metering going in the corridor. We've seen that on Highway 4. We're seeing it on I-80 right now. Getting ready to open the ICM, and it's moving south on the 242 down to 680 through Walnut Creek. We're seeing those studies go on. So, they're not going to initiate ramp metering unless there's storage on the ramps. So it could involve adding it involves adding a lane to the ramps, and that lane could either be HOV or mixed flow. I think Caltrans MTC recommends HOV, and either one would be sufficient to alleviate the backing up onto the arterials.
And before we get off that particular issue, I wanted to add that the incident management scenario that we looked at, we don't have a slide for it, but it's worth noting that when we simulated an incident in our operations analysis model and assumed a 45-minute lane closure time and then a 20-minute lane closure time, the reduction in delay was extremely significant. The difference between in this particular case 475 hours versus 147 hours of delay. So what that shows is that with if you can clear an incident in half the time it currently takes, you can significantly reduce congestion in a corridor. And since collisions and incidents can count from anywhere between 35-45% of congestion, depending on what studies you look at, there's relatively little funding being spent on reducing non-recurrent congestion than there is for all the projects we spend to try to alleviate the everyday recurrent congestion. So that's all I wanted to mention there.
And so let's get to some conclusions. Basically, the operational improvements that are planned for the corridor, we believe will have a significant near-term impact, and especially will reduce the diversions onto our local arterials, which we see as a big benefit to our local jurisdictions. I just mentioned that ramp expansions will be necessary for at select locations for the implementation of ramp metering. Monitoring is a big part of that, so that's something that Caltrans and MTC are doing before and after implementation of ramp metering. These will decrease congestion in the near term, but by 2025, we expect to see 2013 congestion levels pop right back up. So there will be a need for some more creative solutions, and we see those auxiliary lanes as one possibility there. Once again, before and after studies are always good. Once you've put in these improvements, you want to go back and monitor them, monitor the system so you can quantify the actual benefits that your improvements have given you. Just want to say that there have been a lot of benefits as part of this study, including the complete streets assessment that Eric discussed earlier, the performance measures that have been established as part of this. We know that moving forward, we're going to have to do a lot more quantification of projects using performance measures, so that's been established here. Basically, we plan to use results from this in ongoing and future studies where it's already being used in the TREAT 680 overcrossing bike ped study that's we're kind of working through now, the county in Walnut Creek. It's being used in the I-680 high capacity transit investment options study that's kicking off this month, and we expect it to be used in the wrapping up of the countywide plan and moving forward with a transportation expenditure plan for a sales tax measure. So we went a little long, but I hope you got something out of it, and hope we can answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I received an email from Don Tatz, and he said that the RTPC, they had some comments. I wasn't there. From he, Amy, and Mike Metcalf. Was it incorporated into this was the big question? And if so, just be prepared on Big Wednesday, you're going to hear about it.
Yes, Commissioner Metcalf especially found some technical issues. Being an MIT graduate, he's good at that kind of stuff. So the next day we started working on incorporating his comments as well as the rest of SWAT members, and that is reflected in this report and will be reflected at our authority board presentation.
The other two things. One is I've never heard this described before, but I think it makes a lot of sense. You're the first, second generation report, so frankly, you're on point, and whatever you do, I assume, is do it right, and the rest of the state gets to copy you, so we probably should get the franchise rights to that or whatever it is.
And it didn't cost the authority a penny other than staff time. So.
And I forget where I underline it, but I was really, if this is correct, at Bishop Ranch, it said the County Connection I-680 Express Bus ridership, primarily serving Bishop Ranch in San Ramon and Martinez, has grown by approximately 33% per year since 2009, and by 2012 carried 1,200 weekday riders. But have they been jumping up 33% a year?
Well, we got that information from 3CTA, and I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many years when those years started.
Yeah, 212. See, so Pleasant Hill needs to get on the ball here. Anyway,
We'll
I'm
check into
impressed
that.
with it. That's a big jump.
Others? Other comments? Are there any comments from the audience? Anything over here? Okay. This item is informational, so I think we say thank you very much. That was a lot of good information. And with that, we will move on to item number 9. Thank you for coming. All the way from Sacramento, huh?
well, in my case, from Fremont and Oakland, but
Oh, okay.
sure.
Not so bad.
Sacramento too.
On 680.
Yeah, it's quicker that way.
That's chicken.
That's right.
Did you take BART?
Today, yes, but when I'm driving to Sacramento, I'm taking 680, and yeah, otherwise I'm taking the Capital Corridor.
Okay. Okay, so with that, we will say thanks again, and we will move on to item number 9, which is the submittal of the draft 2015 Priority Development Area Investment and Growth Strategy. And this is an action item, so.
Yes,
it's a
thank you,
report.
Chair.
Thank you.
Resolution 4035 requires the authority and other CMAs to adopt an annually update a PDA investment and growth strategy, at least annually so far. This document is meant to outline the authority's strategy for supporting and encouraging development in priority development areas in Contra Costa. Draft of the 2015 PDA strategy is due to MTC in May. Our first strategy, which we adopted in 2013, focused on the OBAG program. The second one, adopted last year, added some detail on the character of the PDAs in Contra Costa and some of the obstacles facing them and hindering their development. The 2015 PDA strategy, which is in your packet, focuses on, and thank you for catching the typo, focuses on carrying out progress we've made in carrying out the 8 strategies first identified in the initial 2013 document. For example, the draft 2015 strategy adds detail on the OBAG projects and lists the PDA planning grants that the authority approved conceptually in September of last year and in greater detail last month. It also updates information on local compliance with MTC's complete streets and housing element requirements, building permit activity that's occurred in the county between 2007 and 2014, and information on the new RENA requirements for 2014 through 2022. The PDA strategy also adds detail on the parts of the authority's legislative program that could help facilitate development in PDAs in Contra Costa and throughout the region. Staff's asking tonight for your recommendation to the full authority to submit the draft PDA strategy to MTC and ABAG by their May deadline.
Okay.
I'll make a move without Dave. I'll make a move. Second.
Okay, that would be Durant and seconded by Hudson, both Daves. Okay, are there any comments from the board? Okay, are there any comments from the audience? Okay, seeing none, I guess we have a silent audience tonight. With that, we will vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, with that, we move on to, let's see, I don't know if there's anything left.
Other business?
Other business, there isn't any.
I'll do it.
And you have some other business?
Can we do it as like a
Yes, Madam
committee
Chair.
comment? Go ahead.
We do have another business item.
Oh, we do?
Yes, and there's a handout.
Okay, and what is our other business?
And the other business, it's an email from MTC, and it's regarding the kickoff of the 2017 Regional Transportation Plan, and 2 dates have been established to hold workshops. The workshop in Contra Costa is going to be at the Walnut Creek Marriott on Wednesday, April 29th. It's going to be an open house that begins at 7 p.m., wraps up no later than 9 p.m. And we're also looking at the general schedule for the Regional Transportation Plan. It seems like no sooner is the ink dry on the last plan than we start the new one. So we're actually going to start looking at projects out to 2040, looking at a financially constrained project list. That's going to gear up in May, and we'll have to get that done by August. It's about a 2-year process for MTC to get through this, but they're starting it up now, and they're beginning with these open houses. So I just wanted to, if you want to put that on your calendar, we've got confirmation on April 29th workshop that MTC will host.
Okay.
And two things. One, I didn't see anybody else from here, but we had a seminar, I guess you'd have it, panel for infrastructure finance districts. I think I mentioned to a couple of, I'm really excited about the potential of that SB. I think I got 680, but I know that was Lonnie Hancock's. I think it's 368 Bell on what they're doing. It gives you, to me, it gives you the ability to lump a bunch of different funding sources together and coordinate it with a bond measure. Doesn't cost anything to form, meaning you don't have to go to the voters, to form the district. If you want to go to a bond, if it's for like a city hall or something like that, you have to get to 2/3. But otherwise, infrastructure, even private business, it's 55, which it has some bit of excitability. I'd like you to take a look at that, see if you can see anything out of it. Another thing, and I don't know how many times this district has to go, or this agency has to go to small claims court, but I always like bringing it up in front of attorneys. One of the bills that the Air District is supporting is AB 280 Brown, and it would increase small claims court cap for government agencies to the same 10,000 cap that it has for private parties. And maybe the key thing to it that it was missed at first is many times you go to small claims and the other person says, I've got an attorney, so it's gone. Well, up to 10,000, it isn't automatically gone. And it should save substantial costs. So point being is if we have anything to do with small claims, make you aware of it. At least some people are supporting, and it's AB 280 Brown. That's it for me.
Can I ask you a question about that? So if, can a governmental agency take something to small claims? Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying it the other way around?
I tried. I tried the same thing, Janet. They go, no.
No,
But,
no such
you know,
luck.
most of the government agencies I know, well, maybe I shouldn't go here. The staff people they're sitting in there are smarter than the attorneys, so I wouldn't worry about it. Not many attorneys are going to, for $10,000, go crazy about it. But the reality check here is many times you've got something that should be slam dunk settled at small claims, and just to delay it, run up the cost, I don't speak English, give me an attorney, and you're out of there. You're not in small claims. And it doesn't make a lot of sense that private is 10,000 and government agencies 5. But no, I tried the same thing, Janet. No, you're not going to be sending attorneys to small claims from CC. No, you know, maybe we can hire out. It's got to get passed, but it's one we're watching.
Okay. Okay, was that all for item number 10, which was other? And so now we have news clippings and correspondence. I don't remember if there were any. Let's see. So with that, we are adjourned to the next meeting, which is on Wednesday, May the 6th. And thank you all for coming.